Okay, so you're staring at this brand new board game, right?
Yeah, it can be intimidating.
That's where this deep dive comes in. We're going to make you a master strategist.
That's right.
Not just ready to dominate the game, but ANY rulebook that tries to slow you down.
Exactly. Strategic resource management, epic battles. You might even have to starve out your opponents.
Starvation! Okay, you've got my attention. What's the big picture here? What are we actually trying to do in this game?
This game is all about building an empire that doesn't just survive, it thrives. Think strategic resource management, but with a conquer or be conquered twist. Oh, and a little something called economic warfare.
Economic warfare. Now that I can get behind. Where do we start?
The rulebook, pretty aptly called the complete guide, actually,
Yeah.
walks us through the whole setup process. Choosing your capital city, gathering up those starting resources, food, wood, metal, some villagers to kickstart the economy.
Oh, great.
Got to have a warrior to start building that army.
Of course, of course.
And this is crucial, roads.
Roads. Hold on, we're not just talking about moving pieces around on a boring old static board, are we?
Absolutely not. This game has a spatial element, and your roads, those are your lifelines. Literally, they connect your capital to these resource stations scattered across the map.
Okay, I see.
Control the stations, you control the resources, you control the entire game.
Stations, resources. This is sounding better by the minute. Tell me more about these stations. What's the deal?
Think of them as outposts that fuel your empire's growth. Farms for food, sawmills for wood, mines for metal, all the essentials for building up your army, expanding your territory.
Laying with you?
The works.
So controlling these stations is critical, but it can't just be about claiming them. What's stopping my opponents from swooping in and taking what's mine?
Ah, that's where the warriors and towers come in. They're not just for looks, you know.
Right. Gotta have defense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Protecting your stations and strategically capturing your opponent's stations. It's all part of the strategic depth of the game.
All right, so we're building up our empire, securing those precious resources, defending what we've earned. It's all making sense. But this game about conquering, right? How does the combat actually work? Do you just roll a dice and hope for the best?
Well, it's a little more nuanced than that. Combat involves strategic positioning of your warriors. You have to be adjacent to your opponent to attack. And yeah, there's dice rolling involved. But the rulebook adds this whole layer of strategy with special card bonuses.
Hold up, special cards? Are we talking about the event and tool cards I skimmed past in the rulebook? The ones you can, like, buy with resources?
You got it. And they can really shake things up. Imagine this. You're about to launch an attack on your opponent's resource station. Feeling good.
Feeling confident.
And suddenly, bam, a dark age hits.
Yeah.
All production grinds to a halt for 2 whole cycles. Now you have to rethink your entire strategy.
Wow. Talk about a game changer. So everyone's affected by these event cards. It's like this shared moment of chaos that you all have to adapt to.
Precisely. And just when you think you've got a handle on things, here come the tool cards, just to keep things interesting.
Oh.
These cards are like your personal secret weapon, giving you an individual edge.
Ooh, secret weapon. I'm listening. Give me some examples of these powerful tool cards. What kind of chaos am I working with here?
Well, let's just say there are cards to boost your combat strength.
Nice.
Sabotage your opponents by destroying their roads with termites.
Termites. That's brutal.
Even a misleading map to force your opponent to skip their turn.
Yeah.
The possibilities? Endless.
Termites. That's just mean. Okay, so we've got resources, we've got units, buildings, combat, and these crazy game-changing cards. It sounds like this game is a recipe for some pretty epic battles.
Oh, yeah.
But what happens if, amidst all this chaos, a rule dispute breaks out? We don't want things getting too heated.
Well, that's where the special cases section of this rulebook really shines.
Oh.
It's for exactly that. Those potentially ambiguous situations. For example, remember how we were talking about roads being like lifelines to your resource stations? Well, there's a whole section dedicated to what happens if an opponent cuts off that road between your capital and a station.
Oh, so no holing up in your capital, ignoring the rest of the board. I like it.
It's true.
This flanking rule, it adds a whole other layer of strategy, right? Players have to think defensively as well.
Exactly. And speaking of strategic thinking, there's one special case that I found super interesting. Resource depletion. This is where things get really, really interesting.
Resource depletion, what do you mean?
So the rule book, it's very specific about this. Those resource cards, the food, wood, and metal, they're not unlimited.
Oh, really?
They can actually run out.
Now that is interesting. So it's not just about hoarding everything you can get your hands on.
Right.
It's about, like, strategically managing scarcity. You can actually win by being the last player standing with any resources at all, even if your army is tiny.
Yeah. You absolutely could. It adds a whole new dimension. Just picture this. You're low on food, but so is everyone else.
Oh, man.
Do you go for those last scraps, risk all-out war? Or do you try to stretch what you have, outlast everyone else? Resource depletion brings this whole element of brinkmanship into the game.
Wow, that changes everything. It's like a game of chicken, but with, wooden swords and metal coins. Okay, so we've talked about surviving, but how do you actually win this game? Is it all about just getting the most resources and steamrolling your opponents?
Well, brute force isn't the only way to win. The rulebook actually lays out a couple of different paths to victory. You can go for the classic all-out conquest. Seize an opponent's capital city.
Ah, the classic take no prisoners approach. But it can't be as easy as just marching your warriors in there.
No, it takes a little more finesse than that. To actually attack a capital city, your forces have to lay siege for an extra cycle. It's more of a strategic waiting game.
Oh, no.
And remember those warriors we talked about? The ones stationed at your outposts?
Yeah.
Those are key to a successful siege.
So conquering a capital,
yeah,
it still requires planning. Resource management. It's a chess match, not a brawl.
Exactly. But here's that twist we were talking about earlier. Remember those dwindling resources? You can actually win by simply being the last player left with any food at all.
Really?
Everyone else starves, and you inherit everything. Survival of the fittest, literally.
Man, that is intense. I can already imagine the tension building as food starts running low. Alliances are going to get real interesting real fast.
Oh, absolutely. It adds a whole layer of diplomacy, negotiation.
Sure.
Do you share your dwindling resources to try to survive together? Or do you backstab your opponents to try to secure your own victory?
This game just keeps getting deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've covered the basics, the units, the buildings, combat, these crazy cards, even how W to win. But I know there's more in this rulebook. It mentions optional rules, game variations, anything in there catch your eye.
Oh, absolutely. If you really want to kick things up a notch, the rulebook has this whole section on faction bonuses.
Faction bonuses. Now you're speaking my language. Tell me everything.
So imagine playing as the Spartans, known for their military might,
right,
or Vikings, with their seafaring prowess.
Classic.
Maybe even stealthy samurai. Disciplined Templars.
Oh, wow.
Each faction has its own strengths, its own weaknesses, adds this whole new layer of strategy and, historical flavor.
Okay, I'm already picturing myself as a Viking raider, pillaging resources left and right. But does this game only cater to, the competitive types? What about those of us who like to build and strategize together?
It does not. I was actually surprised by this. The rulebook has an optional cooperative mode called the Stand of 300, Sparta's Legacy.
Cooperative mode. So instead of battling each other, we team up against a common enemy. That's a cool twist. Tell me more about this Stand of 300.
So in this mode, all the players, you work together against the game itself, and you're facing off against the legendary 300 Spartans.
Oh, wow.
Imagine that. A united front against a force known for their discipline, their strategic brilliance. Instead of fighting over resources, you have to cooperate, work together to outmaneuver, outlast these legendary warriors.
Wow. That sounds like quite a challenge. Do the Spartans play by a different set of rules?
They do. The rulebook has guidelines for how the Spartans operate, how they expand, how their combat strength increases. It's a true test of teamwork, strategic resource sharing.
That's brilliant. Adds so much replayability. But I have to ask, before we even get to the rules for this cooperative mode, the rulebook goes into this whole thing about the history of the Spartans.
Yeah.
It seems kind of random. Is there a reason for it?
It's not random at all. Remember how we were talking about the faction bonuses, how each faction has its own, strengths and weaknesses?
Right.
Well, the Spartans, they're no different.
Okay, so it's not just about, historical accuracy. It's about actually working their values and their struggles into the game mechanics.
Exactly. The Spartan faction, for example, they start with an advantage. Extra roads, an extra warrior.
Nice.
But it comes at a cost. They have some harsher penalties early in the game.
Yeah.
Symbolizing their, challenging beginnings, their rigorous training. It's like this subtle nod to their history woven right into how you play.
That's really cool. A clever way to, immerse players in the theme. It's like the designers are encouraging us to think like Spartans. Approach every decision with this calculated, balance of risk and reward.
You got it. The Spartans, they weren't just these fierce warriors. They were masters of strategy, resourcefulness, resilience. They understood the importance of discipline, sacrifice, unity. especially when times were tough. And those are all qualities that are essential for succeeding in this game.
It's almost like the Spartans are a case study in strategic thinking, both in history and in the game itself.
Exactly. And that's why the designers keep coming back to them. They embody the skills, the strategies you need to survive in this world. Scarce resources, constant threats, cunning opponents.
This deep dive has been incredible. Started out just wanting to learn the rules of this board game.
Right.
And I ended up with a crash course in Spartan history, strategic thinking, economic brinkmanship.
That's the beauty of a truly well-designed game.
Yeah.
It's not just entertainment. It's about challenging yourself, sparking your curiosity, maybe even teaching you something about yourself along the way.
Absolutely. So as we prepare to conquer this board game ourselves, let's channel our inner Spartan, their strategic brilliance, that unwavering determination. And hey, if things get rough, we can always unleash a plague or two with those event cards, right?
No, now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Strategy, cunning, those are key.
True.
But remember, even the mightiest empires, they can crumble if they underestimate the power of a well-placed termite card or a strategically timed misleading map.
You're right. You're right. So study those rule books, plan your moves, and remember, in this game, just like in life, a little strategy can go a long way.